podcast. I'm your host, William Glass. I'm really excited to talk to you today about why we are self-funding the business and not raising venture capital. So before we jump into that, I just want to quickly recap for those that aren't familiar, might have missed the first few episodes. I'm William Glass, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Ostrich. We are a personal finance platform that's focused on financial well-being and taking what works really well in the fitness industry with group challenges, social accountability, and applying that to money. So we are in the development stages of our product right now, and we've got a lot of really exciting stuff going on. And on the first episode of the podcast, I talked about going from an idea and my experience of my parents getting divorced because of money and how that created this kernel of an idea and eventually led to starting a business and quitting my job. And so this is an extension and continuation of that story and about why we are self-funding the business versus raising venture capital. Great, so why we decided to bootstrap. I want to tell you a little bit about the process and why we are bootstrapping instead of raising capital through three specific stories. One is we turned down a $60,000 investment very early on. The second is we avoided joining a $5,000 idea to launch Accelerator program that leaves you with an MVP. And the third is rejection from a friend. So in January of last year, my co-founder and I, Andrew, were really focused on trying to find a CTO, an engineer, someone to bring in-house as part of the team to help us build the product. And we started looking on AngelList and my co-founder's lab and all these other social network type platforms that are focused on helping entrepreneurs find co-founders. And through that process, we actually ended up getting reached out to by an investor. So one of the investors saw our profile on there and reached out, and we went through a series of 4 or 5 calls over the course of about a month or so. And this investor was actually overseas, based in the UK, and we ended up getting an offer. He offered to put $60,000 into the business, which was really exciting. So most entrepreneurs are optimists, or else they wouldn't get into the business of starting a company where the likelihood is that you fail. The majority of folks and statistics say that you fail. And being an optimist, we obviously were very excited, and I was very excited about the fact that, man, the first investor we talked to wants to give us $60,000. This is great. Like, we're breaking all the stereotypes and stories about having to knock on hundreds and hundreds of doors and getting no's before you finally get one yes. And of course, we're starting to think about, man, this is great. And the other thing is that in January, I was still full-time in my job, and so was Andrew at his. So neither one of us were full-time. And to get an offer was just really crazy, pre-product, pre-revenue, and not even working on this full-time. So anyway, we went deeper and we started digging into the term sheet, and there were some things that started to pop up. So the terms of the deal were, he would invest $60,000, we would invest $30,000, he would get 15% of the company, but the other stipulation was that we had to use his software development company, and we had to use his marketing company. Now, Andrew and I have no issues putting in money in the business, planning on doing that anyway, but that gave us pause that we had to use his specific companies. And his logic and the way that I guess he invests is based on de-risking his investment. So for him, it made sense. If you use my companies, it reduces my costs. But it kind of looked like he just was using us to get a percentage of the company and to use us as business development for his other companies. At this point, we hadn't priced out how much it would cost to build, but you can pretty much build a very simple app for that. that $30,000. So in hindsight, it obviously looks a little too good to be true, and that's why we actually ended up turning him down and just said, you know what, at this point we just don't feel comfortable and we're not ready to move forward. Now, the second experience that we had was, as we were looking for CTOs, we were also trying to figure out, well, how can we build this ourselves? And so through going through those websites, we started getting advertised for this program that was an online accelerator, idea to funded, cost $5,000, and you at the end got this MVP, and everyone within their program gets funded after a certain number of months, sort of thing. Statistically, majority of them do. And that was obviously more interesting and exciting, and so I signed up and did the trial, and it was essentially just online courses of market validation, product, customer profiling, sales, go-to-market strategy, all that stuff. And the MVP, the deliverable at the end, so minimum viable product, wasn't a true minimum viable product. What it was a designed prototype, a clickable prototype, so an InVision or Figma file that you could see what it's like to actually go through the platform, but it wasn't a true MVP in the sense that a traditional venture capitalist would want to see, which is actually at least for software, is a live working version of your platform that users are actually using, not fully featured or even necessarily super, super pretty, but does the core purpose of the platform and proves that there's value in it. And so, my experience before at Gartner, I worked with startups that were pre-revenue up to $250 million in revenue on all of those different things, from sales, marketing, go-to-market strategy, product development, all that stuff. So there wasn't really enough value there, and we, again, still were just starting to price things out and figure out how much it would cost to build. And it seemed a little steep to just get a very basic kind of clickable file. So we ended up avoiding that and chose not to go down that path. Now, the third piece that made us decide that we needed to bootstrap was actually a rejection from a friend. So after I quit my job, a good friend of mine reached out to me. He was in a different industry, but was looking to make some investments and diversify. And he said, whenever you're ready to pitch, I want to be the first one you sit down with. So obviously we were really excited about that. And we got things together really quickly and sat down and started having conversations with him. And it was really great because it helped us get a prototype done very quickly. It helped us do a lot of research and validate market and how we were going to monetize and all sorts of important pieces to the puzzle. But at the end of the day, he said no. And that obviously really sucked, especially because it was someone that both of us would have loved to have worked with. But it made sense in the fact that, truthfully, we weren't ready yet. We hadn't done enough in the business yet for it to warrant that type of investment. We just weren't ready. And it's okay to not be ready to take on capital, because as soon as you do, the whole expectation timelines change, because you're on someone else's clock. As soon as you take that money from someone else, yes, you gain a partner, you gain a valuable resource, and it adds value, but at the same time, now there's expectations of returns and things like that are outside of what the core founding team and business is called upon to do. So we weren't there yet. And going through that process opened that up for us. And at the same time, he gave us some good feedback of how we could improve. And it doesn't mean that doors are closed forever, both with the investor over in the UK and with our friend, right? You can always go back and when timing's right. But it's really allowed us to go deep into the business. And Andrew and I now have a better understanding of the business than we would have if we would have just gotten a bunch of capital and had a bunch of money sitting in the bank and could go outsource and do everything and all that. And while that's important and great, we really need to spend more time in the business, proving out the model, really understanding how it is we're going to go from this idea to a profitable highly successful business that delivers a lot of value to our customers and users. And as such, we are de-risking everything that we do because we don't have that huge check in the bank that's just sitting there and allows us to move quicker, so to speak, and use other people's resources in terms of hiring out a lot of things that we're doing internally now. And by doing that, we're de-risking the way that we're going to market, we're de-risking the way that we're building the platform, we're de-risking everything and proving out every piece of the puzzle before we go and spend a lot of resources, because it's just our money right now. And I think once we get to a certain point, we'll be open to raising money again. But right now, it's been a godsend, and I'm truly thankful that we didn't go down any of those paths and are bootstrapping. And so that's our experience and why we've chosen to bootstrap here at Ostrich. And we're really excited about that, and has allowed us to get really close to our customers. So I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the Silicon Alley podcast. I'm your host, William Glass. New episodes every Friday. Please make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss more of our story, as well as other interviews from really cool people that are doing really awesome things. And thanks so much for joining. Shout out to Brett Miller for providing his song Million Voices as the theme music for this podcast. A special thanks to Carolina Gankars for help editing. And always thank you to everyone who supports the podcast, and to you. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. Thanks so much. This is a Financial Glass production. Here's a sneak peek into next week's episode.
That decision alone, him telling me to go to grad school and it ended up being in the NYU, changed my entire life. Because, the school, but New York. I'm in New York.
New episodes every Friday.